A verse of scripture that I always use before introducing a speaker coming to do something like this is found in Revelation. And it says that they overcame him, meaning the devil. They overcame the devil by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. Through the blood of Jesus and the words of our testimony, the enemy, the devil, is defeated. And this morning, we're going to get a chance to hear somebody's testimony. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with that word, it's a word that we use in the church all the time. And it's kind of similar to the legal definition. Like, if you get called to court, if you get a subpoena and you're called to testify, what that means is you're called to tell, this is what happened, this is what I saw, this is what I experienced. And for a Christian, our testimony is basically, this is what my life was like before Jesus. This is what Jesus did, and this is what my life is like now. And I love testimonies. I really do. And the testimony that we're going to hear this morning is an amazing testimony. It's very special. I had the opportunity to meet this individual a couple of years ago, and I met them, and I'm sure this will probably be part of their story, but it was our week at the homeless shelter. My wife and I were over at the homeless shelter, and this person walked in. And I don't know, those of you who have been walking with Jesus for any length of time, if you've ever just immediately felt the Holy Spirit tap you on the shoulder and point to somebody. Well, this wasn't just a tap on the shoulder. This was grabbing both of my shoulders, pointing me in that direction and saying, there's something about that person, you need to talk with them. And so I started chatting with this individual. And they were at the homeless shelter. We're getting ready to go to rehab. And I said, can I pray for you? And the look on their face was like, yes, pray for me. And so I prayed for them. I remembered her name, her first name. I didn't remember anything else. But while she was away, I kept praying for her. And I just kept saying, Lord, I have no idea where she's at now, what she's doing. But I'm praying for this person right now. And then a few weeks later, I happened to be in McDonald's in Wellsboro. Probably surprises you that a guy that looks as fit as I do would walk into a McDonald's. But it does happen on occasion, okay? So I walked into McDonald's, and there she was working behind the counter. I went, yes, she's back in the area, and she's looking really good. And I didn't have a chance to talk to her because, it was crazy busy. And I'm like, all right, but at least I know where she works. Well, it wasn't maybe a week or two after that she comes walking into church here. And I went, oh, thank you, Jesus. And I've had a chance to get to know this person. And I was told by somebody that you need to ask about her testimony. You need to hear her story. And so we went out to lunch one day. Sitting in Harlan's restaurant over in Wellsboro, Destiny Butler told me her story, and I was blown away. And you are going to be blown away this morning as well. This is a story that everybody needs to hear. Now, I'll warn you ahead of time. It's going to challenge you. There are parts of this story that you might go, I don't know. And you know what? That's a good thing. What's bad is when we receive everything that we hear and believe it immediately without checking it out. I personally have heard Destiny's story. I believe every bit of it is true. Every single thing that she is going to tell you this morning, I believe wholeheartedly. I know that it happened. I know there are others here that feel exactly the same way. But if something is said this morning that causes you to wonder, I'd love to talk with you about it later. See, because I love when people have questions. And I'm not going to promise that I have any answers. One of the things I love about God is mystery. Sometimes there are no answers, and that's okay. Sometimes God does things that is totally and completely beyond our understanding, beyond everything we were taught to believe, yet God will come in and do it. You might say, well, what do you mean by that? Well, think about Peter in the book of Acts, when God brought that blanket down out of heaven full of unclean animals, and God told Peter, eat those animals. And Peter said, no way, Lord, that's against what I know about the Bible, and I'm not going to eat them. And God said, no, I told you to eat them. And Peter said, no, I'm not going to do that. And God said, eat them. And so Peter got up and ate them. Peter didn't want to go against what he believed was true from what he was taught in Scripture, but God told him to do otherwise. No, that was Old Covenant. Peter was then living in the New Covenant. That's another sermon for another time. But you may be challenged this morning. But I would encourage you to press in and ask God. I would encourage you, if you hear something that challenges you, don't tune out what's being said. Listen to what is being said this morning, because I believe that this message this morning is going to bring life to many people. And so at this time, it is my distinct privilege, and it truly is a privilege, to introduce to you somebody who is closer to God than I could ever dream of being. And that is Destiny Butler. I'll go grab it in case you want.
Hi. So the first thing about me is I'm extremely nervous. I wrote a few things down just in case my nerves get the better of me. My first memory, I was waiting by a doorstep outside Chicago, and my father and his reverend came to pick me up from Chicago to bring me to Tioga. And since then, I lived with my father, and he raised me. I had a good childhood. My father was an alcoholic, though. Most parts, he was a great guy. I didn't have any problems. About the time I was 13, things started to change. By about 14, I guess hormones were going through me. 14, 15, I came out of the closet, and I told all my friends that I was gay. My dad didn't know until I was about 17. Things weren't so bad until about then when I told him. And then he didn't speak to me for 2 years. And I was shunned from his house, which was okay, but I went to live with some friends, and I fell into addiction with pills and other substances. And then I went into the Army the day after I graduated. I didn't really have anywhere to go. That's where I went, and I got to go visit Korea, which was amazing in itself. Some things happened over there that weren't so great. And when I came back, I turned to alcohol, and a whole lot of it. Things were okay. I carried a job for the most part, sometimes being homeless, but I moved a lot. I moved to California, South Carolina. I mean, you could name off about 15 states that I've lived in. I just didn't want to be up here. My father and I, we were on the outs a lot about a lot of things, but that's okay. I think that devastated me more than anything else in the world. And then when I was about 28, I had some nerve pain in my hands. I wake up with them swollen and lots of pain through them, and my doctor prescribed me medication. And then after a while, she's like, maybe we should wean you back down off of that because it's not seeming to work. Well, I took that in a different direction, and I turned to heroin and any other substance I could find. And I dove into that for a very long time. In 2013, I had got clean for about 3 months, and then I had decided to use once more. Somebody had handed it to me, and I did not have the will to say no. All I remember is I was in my bathroom, and then I wasn't. And then I was not standing, it was more like hovering. And it was peaceful. And that word, none of the words that I'm going to use come close, not even a little bit, to actually describing anything that had happened. It was a peace beyond peace. It was love, but I wasn't even aware of who I was. I was just there, and I was waiting, and I don't know for what. But I know that there was all light around me. And I could see out, and I could see land, and it looked like here, but there was no houses around. It was just green pastures and trees, and it was unbelievably gorgeous. And I just remember living in this peacefulness that I can't, it was all around me, and it was inside of me. And then I wasn't there anymore. And then all of a sudden, this light came closer to me, or maybe I came closer to it. I don't know. But it was just like a ball of light, an orb of light. And then as it drew closer, I could see a woman. And she had long brown hair and a nose that was very long and straight. And I can remember that about her. But I remember that she looked like a friend or family, but more. And the love that she was sending me was more than anything I had felt here. I had never felt unconditional love, not to the extreme that it was. It was all-encompassing, and I had no fear. I had no fear of nothing. And the compassion that I had felt from this woman. And then she had greeted me, and she spoke to me, but she did not speak in words. She spoke to me in a way that when you deliver a message to somebody, and it was just a knowing passed from her to me, but it didn't leave any questions unanswered. Everything that I had said to her, and everything that she had said back, answered everything completely. There was no question of what she was saying and whether or not it was true. And she told me that I was loved. And she told me that I was loved wholly, 100%. And that there was nothing that I was doing wrong. That she would always be there. That I would never be alone. And I didn't know of my life here. I could not remember it, not at all. And then later, I guess I was shown who I was here. So I remembered then, and I remember being shown a lot of things, but I can't tell you today what all of them are. I don't remember at all, but time there wasn't real. There was no time. There was no space between anything. Everything was connected. Everything was connected. And everything, there was sound that was so beautiful. But the sound, it was almost like you could see it and hear it and everything all at the same time. So nothing played a law here like it does here, like the physics that we have. So when you walk somewhere or you talk to somebody, that wasn't a thing there. So time didn't play a part, so I couldn't tell you how long I was there, but it was much longer than the 45 minutes that it was taking the EMTs to try to revive me. At least it seemed that way, and at the same time, it didn't seem like I was there at all. So it's very confusing. But I had never felt a love like that, not from anywhere. And I had never felt, I had always felt alone here, and there I did not. There I felt like I was a part of something, and nobody had any judgments, not one. I was loved, and there was nothing I was doing wrong. There was nothing I had ever done wrong, and I was forgiven 100% in my heart and in my soul, and I was welcomed in with open arms. And that's not something that I had been used to here, because every time I had done something, I had judged myself, and my father's judgments were the worst. So I didn't understand when I had come back why I was loved 100%. And I have never felt that kind of love from any human ever again. But I know that I'm not alone. And when I was told that I was coming back, and I was given the choice to come back or to stay. And I know everybody's experience is a little bit different from what I have heard, but I was given the choice. And when I was shown the things that I could still do back here, I 100% wholeheartedly wanted to come back. There was not, because I know that I was going back home one day. And I know that I was coming back here to visit because there was unfinished business, and I understood that. But given that choice, looking back on it now, that was incredible. I was given the option. And when I was also visited, that woman had spoke to me, and then there was a male presence behind me. And I remember him coming around and hugging me, but I can't tell you what he looked like. And then there was several others. That is the single-handed, most incredible experience that I will have ever had in my life, and will have. But when I came back, I was scared. And I remember everything was dark. And I remember hearing mumbles. And it was the EMT, but I did not know that. Nor did I know who I was at the time still. Because I had been thrown back into a body and I was in pain. All of a sudden, I was in a blissful spot, and then I was in pain. And I couldn't see anything. And I couldn't make out anybody's voices, nor would I have understood what they were saying in the first place. And then somebody finally stood over top of me, and I was able to see. And she said, "It's okay, you're at home. You had died." And it didn't make any sense to me, what she was saying. But she was a familiar face, so I knew I was okay. And I knew I was here. I just hadn't understood it all. And then for a few months, everything was beautiful to me. Everything was incredible. Picking up a spoon and looking at it, it was incredible because of where I had been. You don't pick anything up with your physical hand. All that physical stuff, it wasn't real, so it was kind of incredible trying to merge the two things together. And for months I was clean and I was very happy. But nobody had really wanted to hear my story of what I was saying. It was kind of just thrown under the rug. Oh, you had just had this happen. So it was probably just a hallucination. But I couldn't shake it because the realness of it there is beyond the realness of anything here ever. And it still is. It was like you could feel everything in its essence. Everything was alive. The sounds, the colors, the voices. Even though they weren't like it was here, like you're hearing me now, it wasn't like that. But it was more real there than here, and it will always be. So I was trying to wrap my head around everything, and I kept telling myself I was crazy. But I knew I wasn't crazy. And for a while, I stayed in the drugs. After that, I got back into it. And I lived in a personal hell for a very long time. And my father had passed away while I was in Texas. Well, just before I came back. I came back from Texas because he wanted to talk to me on the phone. He was so eager to talk to me, I knew right then something was very wrong. We didn't have that kind of relationship. I mean, he loved me, but he loved me in his own way. So I came home, and within that week, he was in ICU, and I spent that week with him in ICU. And then I held his hand when he passed. And for weeks after, I dove into drugs even harder. And then something basically tapped me on the shoulder and said, "I'm still here." And where it was plentiful around me, I told somebody else, "It's time to go. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm done." And I walked out of the house, and somebody had handed me a bag, and I took it with me, a bag of drugs. And I got to the end of his driveway, and I emptied it. And that's something I've never done before. And I had felt relief, utter relief when I did it. And as I was walking down this dirt road with somebody, I was screaming to God to help keep me walking forward. And that I wasn't sure where I was going to go, but I was going. So I walked down this dirt road, and then she got mad at me because we had forgot the cell phone and everything else at this drug house. And I said, "I'm not going back. Nothing is going to make me go back." And I had forgot the watch that my father had always worn. And I left it there, and I screamed, "I'm sorry, but I can't go back because I know I'll end up dead. So I'm sorry about your watch, but it's got to stay behind." And I kept walking. And then my friend kicked off her shoes, mad, threw them in the river, and I took mine off and handed them to her. And we had walked 6 miles down this road where a police officer had picked us up, escorted us to the Pennsylvania border about 3 miles away, and said, "You can go from here." And he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I don't know, rehab." And he's like, "Okay," and I was just happy. I had never been so happy to just feel relief, to be walking away from something that had kept me a prisoner for so long. And being a redhead, I am very sensitive. I've always worn shoes my whole life because I cannot walk barefoot anywhere without it hurting severely. And then I continued to walk to Tioga Junction and then up 328 barefoot because I just felt she had to have the shoes. And I felt something was walking with me. And I felt it for the first time here. And I continued, and I got there, and then my friend said, "Where are you going?" And I said, "Can you take me to the homeless shelter tomorrow?" And she's like, "Yes, but no drugs in my house." And I said, "I have none." And she said, "Okay." And then she took me to the homeless shelter. And I had to try for a day or two to get into a rehab. And suddenly, the day that I had met Harry and Brenda, I was at the Human Resources or whatever it was in Tioga County, and they said, "We can get you out at 7 o'clock, and my friend can get out at 8 o'clock. We're going to separate places." And I said, "That's fine, just as long as she's out of here, because I made a promise. I brought her into this county. I'll help get her out." And that's where her and our path had ended. And I went to the homeless shelter, and I had surrendered on that path that I had walked 100% with my whole heart. And I started finally allowing everything that God had shown me in heaven. I had finally allowed it, like I had accepted that that's truly what happened. Because during that time, I think I kept trying to OD to just try to get back there. And he wasn't letting me come back. So all of that had transpired. And then Harry had come in, and Brenda, and he said, "I'm a pastor, but I'm not that kind of pastor." So, and then when I was about to leave, my ride was there, and he's like, "Can I pray for you?" And for the first time in my life, I said yes. Because I did not believe in Jesus. I did not believe, I thought maybe there was something higher. But my father had told me many, many times, as most of my family did, that I was going to hell for the choices I had made in life. So I thought if there was something, he sure as hell wasn't going to love me. So I was very unsure on everything that was going on. So feeling the love that I did in heaven was confusing for a very long time. After I had went to rehab, I had never been so happy I almost kissed the ground. And all the techs had told me, they're like, "I've never seen somebody with your kind of energy here," and everything that they said to do, I did it. Because I took my hands out of it when I had surrendered. I had taken my hands out of it completely, and I let everybody else make my decisions for me as long as I thought they were telling me the right decisions to make. I left all my old friends behind, everything. And then they said, after 21 days, "You're going." And I said, "I don't want to go. I want to stay right here." And they said, "You got to go home." And I said, "I don't have a home. I don't want to be here." So they told me, "Pick a place. You've got to go." I said, "Well, the homeless shelter might be open to me. I'll ask them." And Abby had said yes. So I went back. And then I got a job at McDonald's. And I had never been so happy for somebody to take a chance on me as when they said they would. And I started AA. And I thought it was just a cult, to be honest. I wasn't sure about what was going on with the whole thing. So it was very confusing. But these people knew how to live a sober life because they had lived the life that I had lived, but now they're doing it very sober. So I went, and I did everything they asked. And I had met Jessica, and she brought me into church. And Harry looked very familiar, but I was quite unsure of how. And then he had told me, he's like, "Do you remember me?" And then it kind of hit. And it was just kind of incredible that we got to meet again, and you were the first person that had prayed for me since I was little. The only other thing I forgot to say is that when I was in one of my darkest spots, I had stood at the top of a stairs somewhere. And then I had just dropped to my knees. And I had dropped to my knees before, but I really dropped to my knees. And I said, God, I don't know what to do. I'm lost. I'm so lost. And I need your help because I don't have anyone to turn to. Not a soul in this world, not anybody. And I just need your guidance. And I then had felt, it was like his hands were around me because I felt that love that I did in heaven. That encompassing love that every cell in my body, that he was inside of all of them and it was buzzing. And it was buzzing so loud, and then he had told me to stand up. So I did. And he told me to walk down the stairs, and the light seemed to grow brighter, and I thought I was crazy, and I wasn't. And inside my head, it was not my voice, but he said, wait. And not more than 30 seconds later, 2 people had come into that house, 2 people that I had wronged, that had wronged me too, but I wasn't there to worry about their side of the street. And it was just like something dark. And I felt attacked at all sides. But I didn't feel scared. And finally I said, this is what I had done wrong to you. I had done this, and this, and this. And now I can't make it right. I can try to do better. And then my brother had shown up, and we did not have a good relationship. And he showed up, put me in his car. And he didn't speak the entire way. And I just remember singing. And every song that came on the radio, it was like God was talking to me personally. And that was one of the only times that I had felt him and his love in every cell of my body. But ever since that I had surrendered, everything has finally started coming back, and that I know it's real, and that I know I've been forgiven. And I didn't take that forgiveness to just throw it down the drain again, like I always had. I'm trying to build a better life with it. And I speak to him, and I speak to him more than I do myself these days. And it's like he speaks to me everywhere I go. And I see signs everywhere I go. And I get people put in front of me, and I know it's God that puts them in front of me. And I know sometimes they're put there for me, as I am for them. But I listen to every message he sends me as much as I can now. And sometimes I'm very stubborn because I didn't want to speak about it. Because what I had experienced in heaven was very sacred to me. It was so sacred that I was afraid somebody might try to ruin it. But nobody can take that from me, and I'll never be alone. Because he's been with me this whole time, and I was so unaware of it. Because I didn't look for him. And it's a relationship I have learned where he's always there. I have to be a part of that too. So it's just like when we have a relationship with somebody else, you have to speak to them, you have to communicate with them. And the experience he gave me, nobody's ever going to take away from me. And I know when I leave here, I get to go home. And that I'll be fully accepted, fully forgiven, fully loved. And there are things, those are the things that nobody can take away from me now. Not anybody. So now I just try to live my life with more compassion like I was given, with more love like I was given, with more forgiveness, and anything else that I can possibly bring back. Because those are the things that were important there. Those are the things that mattered. Not any of the possessions that we keep, not any of the judgments that we send off to somebody else. Those things are not real. They aren't real there. Because I didn't feel an inkling of any of those. I didn't have an inkling of fear. Being back here, I do. So I try to say my prayers more often. Because the more I talk to him, the less scared I am. I thought I was going to be a lot more scared to stand up here and speak about it. But I can say now, looking back on it, I was wrong about Jesus. I 100% believe Jesus walked this earth like he said he did, and that he did everything that he said he did. I didn't think logically it could happen. Things aren't logical. as I have learned, and I learned a very incredible way. And now I try to walk with him. That's all I have.
Oh, what an awesome story. And Destiny shared a little bit more with me that I asked her if I could ask her a few questions. So you can pass on anything you want to pass on. But Destiny, just to clarify, she was dead for 45 minutes. When she took that last fix, it killed her. She overdosed. She was dead for 45 minutes, and it was during that 45 minutes that she experienced heaven. Now, when you were up there, it felt like a lot longer than 45 minutes, didn't it?
Time wasn't real. Time is something that we have here. It is not something that exists there. So some things felt like I was there for years and some months, but also like the past and present here, that's not a thing there either, because it was almost like I knew what was coming ahead, and I also known what was past. At the same time, I was being spoke to at one instance. So past and present were real either. Like I said, time wasn't.
Yeah. One thing that you had shared with me that totally blew me away was you talked about the judgment. Would you mind sharing what that is all about?
While I was there, after I had been shown a lot of things and talked to, I did what some people would call a life review, except for it wasn't like I read in the books. It wasn't anything like that. Some instances were brought to my attention, but time was almost stopped. And I got to look at some things that I had done, some good and some bad. But nobody was judging me. I was judging myself as I was reviewing those. So it was strange to go back through things that you could forget about. I believe that there was experiences from when I was a baby all the way through. And it was like I could see from a different perspective. All of a sudden, I could see in that life review what that person had been going through, what I had been going through, but what we had thought we were both going through. And we were wrong on both sides. So there was a lot of judgments thrown back and forth, but I was looking at the life review from a different perspective, where I wasn't being judged by something else. I was looking at it through my own eyes, through higher eyes. So I was judging it myself on things that might have been better or worse, but I accepted them just as they were. But it's incredible because you could really see what somebody else was going through, but on our limited bodies and minds here, you can't see what's going on. But I could there. So I wanted to forgive myself, but I cried. I know I cried, but when I cried there, it was like it was raining. But it was the most beautiful thing. And at some parts of it, time kind of stopped to just show me something very important. And then I got to review other things too. But I got to look at it from a different angle and almost judge myself. But I wasn't who I am here, there. It was more.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah. Everything was more. Boy, that's our God. And I remember we were sitting at Harlan's when she was sharing this story with me, and I said to Destiny, I said, I am so jealous of you because you have seen as reality what I have only accepted as faith. And Destiny looked at me and she said, I'm so jealous of you because you could accept it as faith without seeing the reality. And I count it a privilege to be able to help Destiny make scriptural sense of what she knows to be true. As I said, she's the fellowship that she has with God is just something I long for. And they say that you can know whether somebody is a true follower of Christ or not by the fruit, by the byproduct of their life. And I see the fruit in Destiny's life, and there's no question in my mind the woman of faith that she is, the Christian that she is. And the one thing that she had said to me, and I think she briefly mentioned it here in the testimony as well, But she made the comment to me that according to everything that she'd been taught, that everything that she believed, that somebody like her should not have been in heaven. That she was gay, she was a drug addict, and died of an overdose. And you know what? Pretty much everything I'd been taught would have made me feel almost the same thing. That she didn't even really have what we as Christians would call a saving faith when this happened. But then, it doesn't surprise me that God's grace is always better than mine. That his ways are not my ways, that his ways are higher than my ways. I've read that somewhere. It doesn't surprise me that, even though I believe that the Bible is inspired and infallible, I know that I'm not always inspired, and I am most definitely not infallible. It doesn't surprise me that I got some things wrong. You know what I mean? But Destiny experienced the reality. And no, we don't have all the answers. We can't make all the sense out of this. But here's what I know. Destiny was once dead in her sin, and she is now alive in Christ, walking a vibrant faith, serving God, serving her fellow humans. And it's all because of God's incredible love to a gay addict. Amen. Anything else you want to add? All right. Thank you. Well, I'm sure that people have questions. And I'm sure that Destiny will try her best to answer any questions that you have. I would love to speak with you if you have any questions. Again, I'm not going to promise to have any answers, but it's something we can sit down and explore. And again, thank you so much for being willing to share your story, Destiny. That was amazing. So let's give God a round of applause for his love and his mercy.